Imagine winning a fight and walking away disappointed. Not because you lost, because you won, but you didn't like how you won. In 1964, Bruce Lee faced a challenge inside his Oakland martial arts school. The fight was short. Bruce won. By most people's standards, that should have been the end of the story. But for Bruce Lee, it was only the beginning. Because when he looked back at the fight, he wasn't thinking about his opponent. He was thinking about himself. And one question began consuming him. Why did it take me so long? That question would push Bruce Lee to rethink his training and his physical conditioning, and eventually his entire approach to martial arts. This is the fight that changed Bruce Lee forever. Welcome to LeeVerse. Today we're going back to Oakland, California, in 1964. This wasn't a movie set. There were no cameras, no Hollywood audience, and no championship belt waiting at the end. There was simply a martial arts instructor, a challenge, and a fight that Bruce Lee would later use as a reason to become better. Because sometimes the most important moment in a person's life isn't when they lose, it's when they win and realize they still aren't good enough. Oakland, 1964. By 1964, Bruce Lee was teaching martial arts in Oakland. He had already spent years studying Wing Chun and developing his own approach to training, but his teaching was attracting controversy. Bruce was willing to teach students regardless of their ethnic background. That did not sit well with everyone in the martial arts community. According to Bruce Lee's official biography, a group of kung fu practitioners from San Francisco objected to his teaching non-Chinese students. Eventually, a challenge was issued. Bruce accepted. The terms were straightforward. If Bruce lost, he would stop teaching non-Chinese students. So on the appointed day, the two sides met at Bruce's Oakland school. It's important to understand what this moment wasn't. It wasn't the dramatic Bruce Lee we know from movies. There was no cinematic soundtrack, no carefully choreographed fight, no slow-motion camera, just two martial artists facing each other, and a disagreement that had escalated into a physical challenge. The details surrounding the encounter have been retold many times over the decades. Some later versions became increasingly dramatic, but the core account is much simpler. There was a challenge, Bruce accepted, and they fought. The confrontation was short. According to Bruce Lee's official biography, Bruce ultimately pinned his opponent to the floor, and the opponent gave up. Bruce had won. The condition of the challenge had been settled. He could continue teaching his students. For many people, that would have been the victory. But Bruce Lee wasn't finished thinking about what had happened, because there was something bothering him. He had won, but he felt the fight had taken too long. This is where the story becomes much more interesting. Bruce didn't blame his opponent. He didn't claim that the other fighter had been too difficult. He looked inward. Why had he been winded? Why hadn't he been able to finish the encounter more efficiently? If Bruce wanted his martial art to work in real situations, then winning wasn't enough. The method itself had to be effective. That distinction mattered enormously. Bruce Lee wasn't interested in convincing himself that he was great. He wanted to know where he was weak, and once he identified a weakness, he wanted to fix it. The experience pushed Bruce Lee toward a new phase of experimentation. He began paying even greater attention to physical conditioning. Strength, endurance, speed, footwork, timing, efficiency. He began questioning whether traditional training methods were giving him everything he needed. And this is an important distinction. Bruce Lee wasn't suddenly throwing away everything he had learned. He had enormous respect for the knowledge he had received. But he was becoming increasingly unwilling to accept an idea simply because it was traditional. If something worked, keep it. If something didn't, change it. That mindset would become central to his later philosophy. Bruce Lee's response to the fight tells us something important about his personality. He treated failure as information, even when the result was technically a success. That is a very different mindset from simply trying to win. Most people ask, "Did I win?" Bruce Lee was beginning to ask, "What did this experience teach me?" And that question is much more powerful. Because if winning is the only goal, once you win, you're finished. But if improvement is the goal, every experience becomes useful. Over the following years, Bruce Lee continued experimenting with his martial arts. He studied different approaches, he tested techniques, he refined his conditioning, and he increasingly focused on adaptability and efficiency. Eventually, these ideas would contribute to the development of the philosophy he called Jeet Kune Do. But it would be a mistake to say that one fight suddenly created Jeet Kune Do overnight. The evolution was gradual. The Oakland fight was one important experience within a much larger process, and that's precisely what makes it interesting. Bruce Lee didn't discover a perfect system. He kept searching. Imagine how differently this story could have ended. Bruce wins the fight. He celebrates, he tells everyone how good he was, and then he moves on. But he didn't. Instead, he saw the victory as a warning. A warning that there was still work to do. That may be one of the most important lessons in Bruce Lee's entire life. Success can hide weaknesses. Sometimes losing exposes them. But sometimes winning does too. You just have to be honest enough to look. We often remember Bruce Lee for the spectacular moments, the lightning-fast punches, the one-inch punch, the movies, the demonstrations, the legendary performances. But behind all of those moments was something less glamorous. Training, experimentation, failure, self-criticism, and repetition. The Oakland fight wasn't famous because Bruce Lee won. It became important because Bruce Lee wasn't satisfied with his performance. He looked at the result and saw a problem. Then he went to work. Bruce Lee didn't become Bruce Lee because he won every fight. He became Bruce Lee because every experience gave him another reason to improve. The fight in Oakland ended in minutes, but its consequences lasted for years. A victory became a lesson. The lesson became experimentation. And the experimentation helped shape the philosophy that would eventually make Bruce Lee one of the most influential martial artists in history. So perhaps the real story isn't Bruce Lee won a fight. It's this. Bruce Lee won and still decided he needed to become better. That's the mindset that changed everything. Thank you for watching LeeVerse. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more carefully researched episodes about the real events behind Bruce Lee's life, philosophy, and legacy. Until next time, keep learning, keep improving.